The maitre d' barely spared me a glance before shaking his head. "I'm sorry, madam, but there's no reservation under your name." I blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "That's not possible. I was invited to dinner with my husband's family. They should already be here." He offered a polite yet firm smile. "I just checked. There is a reservation for 6 under Morgan Sinclair, but unfortunately..." A familiar, sharp voice cut through the air. "Oh, Claire." Morgan's tone dripped with amusement. "Did you actually think you'd be included in tonight's dinner?" I turned to see my mother-in-law standing a few feet away, dressed in her signature designer outfit, her platinum blonde hair styled to perfection. Behind her, my husband, Adam, sat rigidly at the table, his eyes darting between us, uncomfortable, yet silent. Beside him, his sisters, Charlotte and Emma, whispered to each other, smirking. I felt a pang in my stomach, but I refused to show it. "I don't understand," I said, keeping my voice steady. Morgan's smirk widened. "Oh, sweetheart, I never thought you'd actually show up," she chuckled, as if I were some naive fool. "This is a family dinner, and a place like this, well, let's just say it's a little out of your league. You might be more comfortable somewhere a bit more affordable." Charlotte stifled a laugh behind her wine glass. Emma avoided my gaze. And Adam? He just sat there, gripping his fork, saying nothing. The weight of humiliation settled over me, thick and suffocating. Other diners had begun to take notice, their curious eyes flickering toward the unfolding spectacle. I should have expected this. Morgan had spent years making it painfully clear that I wasn't good enough for her son. I wasn't from a wealthy family, hadn't attended elite schools, didn't fit into the world she had so carefully curated. From the moment Adam and I got engaged, she had gone out of her way to remind me that I would never truly belong. At first, it was subtle, pointed comments about my simple lifestyle, conveniently forgetting to invite me to family gatherings, lavishing Adam with extravagant gifts while giving me nothing but empty pleasantries. But tonight, she had gone beyond subtle. She had orchestrated this. She had arranged for her family to dine at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, ensuring that I would be left standing at the entrance, an unwelcome outsider. And she was reveling in it. I should have been mortified, I should have felt small, but instead, something inside me shifted. Slowly, I smiled. A genuine, deliberate smile that made Morgan's expression falter for just a fraction of a second. Then, without missing a beat, I turned to the maitre d'. "Would you mind asking the owner to step out for a moment?" My voice was smooth, unwavering. Morgan let out a laugh. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Do you actually believe the owner of this restaurant would bother coming out here for you?" I met her gaze steadily. "Yes," I said simply, "because he knows me very well." Morgan's smirk didn't waver, but I caught it, that flicker of doubt in her eyes. She had spent years treating me like an outsider, and tonight, she had taken her little game of humiliation to the next level, and she had done it in front of my husband, his sisters, and a restaurant full of people. The air felt thick with anticipation as I stood my ground. The maitre d' hesitated, uncertain whether to take my request seriously, but before he could respond, a deep voice cut through the tension. "Claire." I turned just as Daniel Leone, the owner of the restaurant, emerged, a man in his early 50s. Daniel exuded effortless sophistication, salt and pepper hair, a tailored suit, and the confident air of someone who ran one of the most coveted dining establishments in the city. Morgan's eyes widened slightly as she took in the way he looked at me, not with dismissal, but with familiarity, with warmth. "Daniel," I greeted, my smile deepening. "It's been a while." His gaze flickered over to Morgan, then to Adam and his sisters, before returning to me. "It has. What brings you here tonight?" I gestured to the table where my in-laws sat, their amusement quickly morphing into unease. "Apparently, I wasn't included in the reservation," I said lightly, "a bit of an oversight, wouldn't you say?" Daniel's expression darkened just slightly before smoothing into a polite smile. "That won't do at all," Morgan scoffed, crossing her arms. "Oh, come now, do you really think this place just conjures up extra seats on demand? This is a private dining establishment. You can't just walk in and expect a table." Daniel's face remained unreadable. "You're absolutely right, Mrs. Sinclair," he said smoothly. "This restaurant does not accommodate last-minute walk-ins." For a split second, disappointment flickered in my chest. But then, he turned to the maitre d'. "But Claire is not a walk-in, she is family." Silence. Charlotte nearly dropped her glass. Emma's eyes darted between me and Daniel, wide with shock. And Adam, his fingers clenched around his utensils, but still, he said nothing. Morgan, however, was not one to back down easily. She let out a disbelieving laugh. Family? Oh, this is rich. You must be mistaken. Claire is my son's wife, and I can assure you, she has no ties to. Actually, I cut in smoothly, Daniel and I go way back. Morgan's eyes narrowed in suspicion. How so? I leaned forward just enough for nearby diners to overhear. Before I married Adam, I worked in fine dining, and Daniel? He was my mentor. A heavy silence fell across the table. Morgan opened her mouth, likely to argue, but Daniel stopped her with a smile that didn't quite meet his eyes. Claire isn't just some former employee, he said calmly. She trained under me right out of culinary school. I taught her everything she knows about hospitality and high-end service. She was one of my best students. Morgan's jaw clenched. This wasn't going according to plan. I saw the dawning realization in her eyes, the fact that, despite her best efforts to belittle me, I had a history she knew nothing about, a history that completely undermined her little stunt. And I wasn't finished yet. I turned to the maitre d', who was still standing awkwardly at his post. I assume Daniel's word is enough to secure me a seat. The maitre d' straightened instantly. Of course, Miss Claire, I'll have a table prepared for you immediately. Morgan's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. This is ridiculous, she hissed under her breath. You're telling me she gets special treatment just because she used to work for you? Daniel chuckled softly. No, she gets special treatment because she deserves it. The maitre d' signaled to a waiter, who promptly began setting a place at their table, right next to Adam. Oh, I said, feigning surprise, looks like there's plenty of room after all. Morgan's fingers curled into tight fists against the tablecloth. This is absurd, she muttered. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice so only she could hear. What's absurd is that you thought you could humiliate me and get away with it. Her nostrils flared. You're being dramatic. I shrugged. I'm just here to enjoy dinner with my family, isn't that what you wanted? Before she could respond, Daniel patted me on the shoulder. I'll have the chef send something special for you, Claire. Morgan nearly choked. Something special? Daniel smiled. On the house, of course. Morgan was visibly seething now, but there was nothing she could do about it. Adam, still silent, reached for his drink. I caught a flicker of something in his expression. Was it relief, embarrassment, shame? I wasn't sure. But I knew this dinner had just begun. The waiter placed a polished silver plate in front of me, followed by an elegantly prepared amuse-bouche, delicate, artfully arranged, and complimentary, courtesy of Daniel. Morgan's expression? Pure, unfiltered rage. Oh, I murmured, picking up my fork and slicing through the dish with practiced ease. This looks incredible. I took a bite, savoring the taste. But more so, the silence that hung in the air. Charlotte and Emma exchanged wary glances across the table. Adam still hadn't said a word, his gaze fixed on his wine glass like it held the answers to his unspoken thoughts. But Morgan? She wasn't one to accept defeat easily. She took a deliberate sip from her own wine glass before setting it down with far too much force. Well, she said, forcing a smile, I suppose it's only natural that someone like you would know people in hospitality. I raised an eyebrow. Hospitality? Morgan waved her hand dismissively. You know, service industries, waiting tables, kitchen work, not exactly the kind of careers we're accustomed to in this family. Ah, there it was. The true motive behind her little act. It wasn't just about excluding me from dinner. It was about reminding me, in front of everyone, that in her eyes, I was still just the woman who had worked her way up from nothing. I took another sip of wine before responding. You say that like it's a bad thing. Morgan's eyes flickered with annoyance, maybe even surprise. She had expected me to be rattled. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I simply meant, she continued, that it must have been quite an adjustment for you, marrying into a family like ours. Her voice remained light, but the words oozed with condescension. And Adam? Still nothing. I looked at him, studying the way he refused to meet my gaze. And then it hit me. This wasn't just about Morgan's cruelty. It was about his silence. This wasn't the first time she had tried to humiliate me. It happened at our wedding, when she forgot to invite my side of the family to the rehearsal dinner. It happened at Christmas, When she gave me a cookbook called Simple Recipes for the Clueless Wife in front of everyone. It happened last summer, when she casually remarked how lucky I was that Adam had taken a chance on me. And every single time, Adam said nothing. And I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. That I didn't want to cause any conflict. But this? This was different. This wasn't a passive-aggressive comment. This was an orchestrated attempt to humiliate me in front of an audience. And Adam had let it happen. I placed my wine glass down with slow, measured precision, then, leaning forward, I rested my elbows on the table. "Morgan," I said smoothly, my voice calm yet firm, "do you know the difference between you and me?" She tilted her head, curiosity flickering across her face despite herself. I smiled. "I earned everything I have." A sharp silence fell over the table. Morgan's expression hardened. "Excuse me?" I didn't blink. "You heard me." Beside her, Charlotte stiffened. Emma pressed her lips together, as though suppressing a laugh. Morgan scoffed. "Are you suggesting that I haven't worked for what I have?" I let the question hang for a beat before responding. I didn't marry into wealth. I didn't inherit privilege. I built my career from the ground up. And yet, I gestured at the table, here we are, eating at the same restaurant, enjoying the same service, given the same level of respect. Morgan's fingers tightened around her napkin, her knuckles turning white. The amusement had drained from Charlotte and Emma's faces. And Adam? He looked like he wanted to disappear. For the first time since meeting Morgan, I saw something flicker in her eyes, something she usually concealed too well. It wasn't anger. It was fear. Because for years, she had told herself that I didn't belong, that I was lesser, that I was just a woman who had latched onto her son. But now she was beginning to see the truth. I picked up my fork, casually cutting another bite of my dish. "Oh, and Morgan?" She exhaled sharply, her frustration simmering just beneath the surface. "What?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You should be careful who you look down on." I speared a bite of food, placed it in my mouth, and chewed slowly before adding, "You never know who might end up above you." The tension at the table was suffocating. Morgan, usually poised and composed, sat frozen, gripping her wine glass so tightly that I half expected it to crack. Adam looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Charlotte and Emma exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene. And me? I had never felt more certain of my place. I could see it in Morgan's expression, the way her carefully crafted mask of superiority had fractured, if only for a moment. She wasn't used to being challenged. She thrived on control, on people bending to her will, on fear and forced politeness. But I wasn't afraid of her anymore. Morgan inhaled slowly, composing herself before placing her glass down with a quiet but deliberate click. "I see," she said, her voice deceptively smooth. "I suppose I should commend you, Claire. You've managed to climb quite high from where you started." I sipped my wine, not giving her the reaction she wanted. "But tell me," she continued, her smile dripping with faux sweetness, "if you're so independent, so self-made, why is my son the one financing your lifestyle?" I paused. Charlotte let out a quiet gasp. Emma shifted uncomfortably. And Adam flinched. Morgan's smile sharpened as she felt the attention shift to me. I set my glass down, my movements slow, deliberate. "What exactly do you mean?" I asked, feigning confusion. Morgan leaned in slightly, lowering her voice to a mocking whisper. "I mean, darling, that my son is the reason you can afford that little boutique job of yours. You don't need to work, yet you play pretend at having a career. How charming." She tilted her head, her smirk deepening. "You speak of self-sufficiency, but at the end of the day, you're still living off my son." And there it was. Her final move. The insult meant to humiliate me beyond recovery. The final blow to put me back in my place. I let the words settle, noting the way Adam still wouldn't meet my eyes. The way his sisters held their breath, waiting for me to crumble. And then, I laughed. Not a nervous chuckle. A full, genuine laugh. Morgan's smirk faltered. "I'm sorry, is something funny?" I placed my napkin back on the table, still chuckling. "I just realized how out of touch you truly are, Morgan." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" I gestured toward Adam, my voice cool and measured. "You think he supports me?" I arched a brow. "That's adorable." Charlotte made a choking sound. Emma's jaw fell open. And Adam went pale. Morgan's smug expression vanished. What are you talking about? I sighed, almost pitying her. You still see Adam as the one in control, don't you? The provider, the one who rescued me. I tilted my head. But let me tell you something, Morgan. That's not how this marriage works. Morgan stiffened. You want to know what's funny? I continued. Adam's business? His investments? I let the words hang in the air before delivering the final blow. Half of them were funded with my money. A stunned silence fell over the table. Morgan's eyes widened, her carefully built world shifting before her very eyes. What? She whispered. I smiled, a smile devoid of warmth. Adam didn't build his career alone, I said, still looking at her but keeping my gaze locked on my husband. When he wanted to start investing, he didn't have the capital. I picked up my wine glass again, but this time, I did it with purpose. Morgan's fingers twitched in disbelief. That's not possible, she scoffed. I shrugged nonchalantly. Believe what you want, but the reality is, your son's success has been built on my investments, my strategies, and my unwavering support. Charlotte and Emma exchanged glances, looking to Adam for confirmation. But Adam, still silent, still frozen, doing nothing. I shook my head, letting out a small laugh. You think you can make me out to be some dependent housewife? I chuckled softly. That's hilarious, because the truth, Morgan, I leaned forward slightly. Adam needs me far more than I need him. Morgan's face flushed with anger, her cheeks turning crimson. I leaned back, crossing my arms with calm assurance. You've spent all these years trying to make me feel like I'm out of place, like I don't belong here, but guess what? I met her gaze with certainty. I've been the one keeping this marriage, and your precious family reputation, afloat. Emma looked like she might faint. Charlotte was utterly speechless. And Adam? Adam finally opened his mouth. Claire, he croaked, maybe we should. I held up a hand, cutting him off. No, Adam, I said, my tone firm and clear, you don't get to maybe we should me right now, not after sitting here silently while your mother tried to humiliate me. Morgan looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time, and what she saw was her son, her pride and joy, completely spineless. Suddenly, she didn't look so proud of him anymore. For the first time, she looked at him like he was small, like he was beneath her expectations, like he had failed her. It was a delicious shift in power. I stood up, smoothing my dress as I made my way toward the door. I think I'm done here. Morgan's nostrils flared. You can't just. I turned toward Daniel, who had been observing the scene from a polite distance. Daniel, it was lovely seeing you. Thank you for the hospitality. Daniel nodded, clearly amused. Always a pleasure, Claire. Then I turned to Adam. You coming? He hesitated. His eyes flickered between me and his mother, but I already knew what was coming. Adam had never chosen me before. And I knew he wasn't about to start now. Morgan's smile was victorious. And I smiled right back at her. Because what she didn't know was that I had already made my choice. And soon, she'd regret ever thinking she could put me in my place. I stepped outside the restaurant, feeling the cool night air against my skin, but it barely registered. My mind was sharp, clear. This dinner had been the wake-up call I'd needed, the moment of truth that had been building for years. Now, it was time to act. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady as I typed a message. We're moving forward. Begin the process first thing tomorrow. Within seconds, the reply came. Attorney, understood. You'll receive the first draft of the divorce settlement by noon. I exhaled slowly, staring at the screen. Divorce. The word didn't scare me. What frightened me was how long I had ignored the truth. That Adam had never been on my side. For years, I had been alone in this marriage. But not anymore. Tonight had been the final push. And Morgan? She had no idea how thoroughly I was about to disrupt the life she had fought so hard to control. I arrived home before Adam, giving me just enough time to do what needed to be done. I walked straight to Adam's office, the one he used for his investments, and opened the safe. The passcode? He had never changed it. A mistake. Inside, I found the financial documents. Bank statements, investment portfolios, business agreements. And the one I was most interested in, the contract that tied his most valuable investment to my initial fund. I took a photo of the document, then placed it back exactly as I found it. No need to take it. I already had what I needed. Next, I went to the bedroom. I grabbed a suitcase and began packing. Not in anger. Not in haste. But with complete clarity. This wasn't an emotional decision. This was a calculated departure. By the time Adam walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch, my suitcase beside me, waiting. He froze in the doorway, looking at me like he wasn't sure if he'd come home to the right house. Claire. I tilted my head. Took you long enough. His gaze landed on the suitcase, and his breath hitched. What are you doing? I stood up, calm and composed. Adam opened his mouth, but no words came out. You made your choice, Adam, I said smoothly. Back there, at the restaurant, when your mother humiliated me again, and you just sat there. His jaw clenched. I was trying to keep the peace, he muttered. I laughed. Peace, Adam? I shook my head. Your mother orchestrated this entire dinner to humiliate me. She made sure I was left off the reservation on purpose. She insulted me, tried to make me feel like I didn't belong. I stepped closer, watching him shrink under my gaze. And you let her. Just like you always do. He rubbed the back of his neck, flustered. It's complicated, Claire, you know how she is. I exhaled, my patience wearing thin. No, Adam. It's simple. You're weak. His eyes snapped to mine, offended. But it was the truth. You've spent our entire marriage letting your mother control how you treat me. I was patient, Adam. I gave you countless opportunities. But tonight? I shook my head. Tonight, I finally saw you for who you truly are. Adam swallowed hard. Claire, let's just talk about this. I sighed. That's the problem, Adam. There's nothing left to discuss. I grabbed my suitcase and brushed past him. And just as I reached the door, he spoke up. I'll fight you on this. I turned around slowly. What? His face had darkened, his voice lowering. If you think you're walking away from this marriage with half of everything, you're mistaken. I looked at him for a moment before offering a small smile. Oh, Adam, I said softly, you should really read your own contracts more closely. Confusion flickered in his eyes. What? I cut him off, letting my words sink in. You wouldn't even have half of what you have if it weren't for me. You used my money to fund your investments, and guess what? I paused for dramatic effect. I have all the documents to prove it. His face lost all color. I stepped closer, my voice lowering. I let you borrow my money, Adam. I let you build something with it. But now, I smiled, now, I want it back. Adam staggered back, clearly reeling from the realization. He thought he could intimidate me. He had no idea who he was dealing with. He stood there, frozen, pale, his jaw clenched tight. I saw the moment it hit him. That I wasn't just leaving him. I was taking everything he thought he owned. He opened his mouth, probably to argue, to beg, or to manipulate me as he always had. But I didn't give him the chance. I'll be staying at the penthouse, I said, adjusting the strap of my bag. His brows furrowed. What penthouse? I smiled, tilting my head slightly. Oh, Adam, the one you think you own. I watched his confusion turn to dread. The downtown penthouse? He asked, his voice shaky. The one I bought? I nodded. Under my name, yes. His nostrils flared. You wouldn't. I already did. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope, tossing it onto the counter. He hesitated before picking it up, his eyes scanning the legal document inside. His hands trembled. This, he swallowed hard, this says you own 51% of my investment firm. I nodded, correct. His breathing grew shallow. That's impossible. I shrugged. Not really, I was the original investor, remember? I never transferred ownership to you. You just assumed I did because, I smirked. Well, you never bothered to read the contracts, did you? I watched panic slowly spread across his face. His mind was probably racing, realizing how he had let this slip through his fingers. CLA, he began, voice tight. You can't just take this from me. I smiled. I'm not taking anything. I already own it. He staggered back, gripping the counter, looking like he couldn't believe what was happening. This was the man who had let his mother humiliate me. Who had sat there in silence while she tried to strip me of my dignity. And now? Now, he was the one who was powerless. I don't understand, he muttered. Why? Why are you doing this? And for the first time in years, I felt completely, undeniably free. Because, Adam, I said, I finally see my worth. With that, I turned and walked out of the house. For the last time. A month later, I sat in the penthouse, legs crossed, a glass of champagne in my hand. Across from me, my lawyer smiled as she slid the finalized divorce papers toward me. It's official, you're free. I exhaled slowly, running my fingers over the thick paper. Free. The past few weeks had been a blur. The legal battle had been swift and brutal. Adam tried to fight, of course. He stormed into meetings, demanded a better deal, threatened to take me to court. But once my lawyers presented the documents showing I was the majority shareholder in his company, his arrogance crumbled. Morgan tried to intervene too. She called me, furious, accusing me of being a gold digger. I simply responded, if you had raised him better, this wouldn't have happened. And then? I blocked her number. Because Morgan Sinclair was no longer my concern. I lifted the champagne glass to my lips, savoring the moment. And then, as if the universe had one final laugh to share, my phone buzzed. Adam, can we talk? I smirked, setting the glass down and typing back. Me, about what? A pause. Then, Adam, I don't know what to do. I exhaled, shaking my head. It was almost sad. For years, I had waited for Adam to show up for me. To be the man I thought I married. I had waited for him to stand up to his mother. To fight for me the way I fought for him. But now? Now, I saw him for exactly what he was. A man who spent his life hiding behind others' power. Too weak to build anything on his own. And the irony? He needed me now more than ever. But I didn't need him at all. I typed one last message. Me, that's not my problem anymore. Then I blocked his number too. Because for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And that was the most powerful decision I'd ever made. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video, stay stunned.